This is Shana Salaff. I'm live here. I think I started just a smidge early. I wanted to make sure I got it all right. Let's see, how do I turn on the comments? Hello. Hello. How do I turn on comments when I'm actually filming? This is weird. Phone, let's see, when I was filming on FaceTime. Do I swipe? Yikes. Dawn, how do I, oh, maybe the comments are already on and I just haven't gotten any yet. There we go. Hi, Stacy. Here I am. This is my very first time doing a live video, so bear with me as I kind of stumble through. Oh, I got a little guest. I don't know if you can hear her. My cat Luna just came to visit. Hi, Tyke. So, hey, honey, you want to say hi? I say hi to everybody. This is my friend. It's just me and her right now in the house. Okay, thanks, Stacy. What I'm going to do is talk to you guys now, just a little bit so you can see my face. And then when I start the actual demo, I'll have to turn the camera so you see what I'm doing. And then I've got my iPad going. Hopefully, let's see, let me make sure I'm watching it. And then I can answer questions that way. If you don't hear me answering your questions, I'm going to take a break and then I'll make sure and check and you guys can throw them at me again. So I will get your questions even if it seems like I'm missing it right now. But I'm going to give it a try this way. We'll see. But first, hello. Let's see. It's not. Let's see. To get me back. Oops. Dang. There we go. Okay, clay buddies. There we go. Okay. Here I go. I'm seeing my demo. I've got the sound turned off. Let's see. It seems to be a bit time delayed on my iPad. Unless, let's see, is there a way to catch up? Do you know, Stacy, if I've got something going on the side, is there a way to sync it up? I think it's got, like, it started me right from the beginning. Let's see. Hi, everybody. So great to have you all. I wasn't sure how many people would be staying over to the later hours. Okay. Wow. All right, just a little bit of technical difficulties while I'm trying to get my iPad feed to be actually live. That's so weird because when I was, anyway, I tried doing these all ahead of time. Let's see. There's some comments. I see Donna Unger. I'm not currently teaching right now. All right, so I'm a little behind. So just bear with me and I'll take a break. I have this sort of planned out, so I'll show you what I'm doing first, and then I'm going to kind of give you some more background, and then during that time I can address questions. So I'm going to start. Basically, I wanted to share with everybody the method I've been using an overhead projector. So I'm going to take you to that machine right now. Whoops. Hang on. Hello. Hello. Here we go. Here's the overhead projector. Okay. Here we go. So it's old school. It's the kind that I got, I got it on eBay, and I'm going to turn it on. And it'll look really bright. And on top of it, I have a transparency. So it's a pattern that I've started on the computer, and I printed it out onto the acetate, and now I'm using this projector. And it's totally old school, and I had meant to check, but I didn't get the chance to see whether they're still available. I've been getting them on eBay or like at a renovator's resource. I got one for $10, which is amazing because it had 2 bulbs in it, which are each expensive. The bulbs are actually the most expensive thing, and they're still available. I'll show you an example of that later. I think now you can just use a digital projector if you're starting fresh. I've seen ones that are small. You can actually stick them into your phone and project right from your photo. So that could be really, really convenient. I don't know how cheap they've gotten yet. It was like $450 when I saw it, but that was a few years ago. So this cost me like $100 with the machine, the shipping, and the bulb, and the bulb goes out every year or so. So it's a pretty cheap thing. The transparencies are a little pricey, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I'm gonna turn off my lights, so hopefully you can see just the projector. Oh yeah, I was gonna do something first. I just pulled these out of the kiln. So these are some examples of what I've been doing. This is a newer piece. And this is something this pattern I've been doing for a while. So I project the patterns, and then I come in later on during bisque and I put in these diamonds behind it. So the flowers are what I'm doing right now. Thanks, you guys. And here's an example of kind of a more detailed piece. Let's see if we can get a good lighting on it. So I've been working with these poppies right now, and I've worked with quite a few other patterns over time. And I find this way really easy going for me. I don't have to worry about placement because the projector does that all for me. Alright, so I'm going to switch to the projector mode. Give me a sec. I have to turn my setup a little bit. And make sure that I get, the tricky part is getting my hand and the pattern. Okay, so let's see. Get the pattern focused. And there's a focusing wheel right on the projector, and you can move it forward for smaller and move it back for longer. Oops, can you guys see? I better turn off some more lights. Here we go. So I'm turning on. Okay, all the lights should be off. All right, sorry, let me make this. This does work. I just have to get it just right. Okay, so I sit back here. Hi, Ian. This last night and it worked perfectly. Why am I only seeing part of it? Let's see. Yeah, it's just me in here. It would be easier if somebody else was holding the camera. How did I do it? I did it last night and I swear it was so much better. No. Talk amongst yourselves, guys. There we go. Oh, we're starting. Okay, we're getting closer. All right. Yeah, let's maybe up here. No. Figures. What was the last person saying? She practiced it, and then she didn't work quite as well. All right. Trying this on more of an angle, because I can make this work. Of course, like the first thing I do as a live feed, I make it this complicated thing where it's like really hard to see, right? Huh. Alright, moving the camera. What the heck? I totally had this. Alright. Thanks, Corey. Yeah, I'm like, had it working. Last night was as good as I was going to get. This is really close from what I remember. If you go too close or it doesn't focus. Alright. And, alright, come on. The pattern was on the cup, yes. The more room light. Okay, I'll try that. Maybe. See if that's enough. Okay. Let's try a bit more. Let's see. The thing was, what I had was a better view where you could really see it. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's a lot better. Okay. It's only as good as I'm going to get, and you're going to see me reaching over, so I'm going to go get my X-Acto knife. Sorry. Alright, this is pretty good. You can all see the piece. I use an X-Acto knife, just a regular X-Acto knife to do the carving because I like the thin lines, the thin deep lines for what I'm doing. You could use a pencil or a pen or one of those styluses with the round tip. It's really up to you, depending on the look you want. Alright, so I find the line and I try to draw with my knife as perpendicular as possible to the pot. Oops. And if you make a little boo-boo, it's actually easy. You just kind of rub it in the opposite direction from the way you've cut and they'll pretty much disappear. And the way that I work, I don't need them to be perfect. And I find, unfortunately, this isn't that great for a geometric pattern unless you're projecting it on like a very flat plate or a tile. It really needs to be flexible because it's going to distort with the shape of the pot. And I work at leather hard. There's kind of a range where you can work. If it's really soft, you get a really deep line, but you're more likely to distort the piece if you, like you'll see with a cup where I have it on it, or a bowl where I have it on its side. And if it's too dry, then you get a fuzzy line. It doesn't work very well. So there's a pretty good range where you can work. I do it after I trim. I usually let it sit up a day under plastic after trimming. You guys see? Yeah, that's my little Luna. She likes to talk. She likes to be where I am. And see this part right here? It's distorted because it's on a curve. So what I do is I turn the piece in order to get the alignment. So rather than keep going, I turn the piece to meet the pattern. Let's see. And depending on how round your piece is, you'll get more or less distortion, and sometimes that's really fun, and sometimes you kind of work around it. Like right now I'm kind of trying to adjust for it. And this is a lot easier when you're facing it and not trying to get it. I'm trying to keep my hand out of the way of the light, so it's a little easier when you're straight on. And I actually think I'm okay with comment or questions because I'm looking at the phone pretty much all the time now as I'm making sure I get it right. These little circles, I've started doing them later because they're kind of a pain to do this when the pot's vertical. So I'm just going to draw the lines to indicate where they're going. And this is a good kind of example. Let's see if I can go closer of getting a sort of a sideways cut, and because I wasn't perpendicular, so I was at an angle. And the only problem with that is it makes a very sharp edge that tends to chip later, and then it looks kind of fuzzy. So perpendicular is good. If you used a pencil, like a sharp pencil, you wouldn't have that problem. So to move the pattern around the piece, I move the piece itself, like I'm moving it around on the bat to keep going. You get kind of a narrow range. If I wanted to go left, I move the whole thing. So I'm moving actually the whole banding wheel, and then you can see the pattern will catch up. And it's looking more distorted right now than it normally is. I'm working right here where it's not that distorted. So I don't have any wax on it. It's just greenware. You could do wax because if you wanted to do inlay. When I inlay, I don't use wax, but some people do. They'll paint the whole surface with wax and then let it dry and then do the carved lines through so that when they do inlay they don't have to clean up as much. But this is perfect for inlay. I do my inlaying later with the glaze. Oh, thanks, Joe. I'm so glad you have a mug there. Yeah, Clay Arts Vegas has some of my work online. They're still processing, but they'll be back up and running and you can buy them there. And I'm going to start I'm working on my Etsy shop. Oops, I gotta move my hand. So here's this little poppy pod down here. And it might seem, kind of silly. Here I am like projecting it, but I'm not sticking straight to the lines. But I like the freedom that this gives me. I don't have to worry about, okay, where is this line going to go? I get kind of uptight. Like I can draw, but I'm not as good as I'd like to be in terms of freehand. And if I wanted to do this freehand rather than projecting, let's see, this one's getting hard to see for you guys. Then what I would do is I would teach myself the pattern by painting it and drawing it over and over again on a piece of paper. And I did that for a while, and I'm just being a little bit either lazy or time saving because I'd rather use more patterns with the projector than take the time to learn the one pattern. But it's something that I think about doing, if that makes sense. I applied to ClayCon West. Actually, I didn't apply with this. I applied with making a teapot, and they chose some other presenters. So I'll go apply again when it happens again. Okay. I'm just going to do a little bit more here and then move on to the next piece. I can finish this later. I think someone asked about where I get the patterns. And I actually, if I'm going to say if you guys subscribe to Pottery Making Illustrated, but even just on my website I have a link to my latest, my articles. And in my last article, it's called Clay in Social Media, or Pattern in Social Media. Luna, shush, I'm teaching. Shh. And I talk about it, and some of the patterns I do find on social media. And I talk about like good practices, like not stealing and that. I found a site, actually, I think it's called Creative Market, where you can purchase patterns. So it's a place for graphic designers to sell their work. And this one I'm using right here is something I purchased. So it was like, I don't know, $12 for 40 different patterns. And they send you files. And they sent me one little tiny square file. And on Facebook, yeah, that's Luna Deb. On Facebook, on Photoshop, I took it and I reprinted it like one next to the other. So I had it tiled. So it flows. So actually it's a pretty small pattern, even though on the sheet that I'm working on, it covers the whole sheet because I've done that. And I've photocopied from books. Let me see, no, that's not gonna work. I'm just gonna turn it off so you can see it. I'm gonna move to the next piece that I'm doing, that I'm decorating, to show you some other forms. So yeah, I've looked in books and photocopied pages and then imported them in the computer. So I've got a bowl here, and it's a little trickier with this form. So what I do is I do the inside and the outside, and you'll see it's quite distorted. So I don't usually work in this direction with a bowl. What I do is I put on my decorating table, put up a couple of bats, which I will just get. Let's see, I'll go this way. That was our safety warning that we're going to be shut in as of tomorrow. We're going to have to stay inside, or, going out for walks, but no one's supposed to leave the house unnecessarily here. Okay, so here's the bowl. Let's see the setup. There we go. So you'll see on a flatter. Thanks, Emil. I'll definitely try again for the, oh, hi, Sunyin, for the PlayCon. So it's so much easier when you've got a flatter surface. And this is, I made the flattest bowl I wanted to make just to share with you guys. Looking a little fuzzy because it's actually an inch or two more forward, so I'm going to have to adjust the projection. There, ooh, there we go. And I'm going to actually use a different pattern here. Come on. Let me actually switch patterns first. So yeah, I've gotten patterns from books, or kind of online, like on Pinterest. I mean, there's really a lot of places. I just try to find open source patterns. So patterns that are not copyrighted. There we go. This is another poppy pattern that I've been using that I like a lot. There we go. And sometimes only part of it's in focus and you have to kind of move it around. So you get kind of flexible with how you work with the projector. You have to kind of have that ability to be a little flexible. And I'm going to set it so that most of it is you know what I'm trying to say, most of it's in focus. And And for this piece, I'm going to paint on it to show you using that as an option. What I need here is a little container for my, this is an underglaze. This is Duncan Concepts. Oops, it's backwards. And I like these for decoration because they melt as opposed to the Amico velvets that don't melt. And I'm not always covering them with glaze. So the way these melt is they look like a glaze. They're not quite as shiny, but I like the feeling of them. And I use bamboo brushes when I'm working with paint. They're just those, like, you can get them in Michael's and you can get them lots of places. And I like when they have a tip, so they've got a kind of a, it's hard to see the tip here, maybe that's better. You can see that it's got a fat width so it holds the underglaze, but then the tip lets you come to a point. So I'm going to just start here at the top. I usually work, right to left away from my dominant hand and then top down. So when you use these underglazes, because they're thinner, when the underglaze is thin, they're more translucent. You can have kind of a thick to thin in your stroke, or like this stroke right here. Oops, I was just blocking that out, sorry. I'll try this again. I'm going to turn just a smidge more so you can see maybe a bit better. So like here at the top of the stroke, I'm going thicker and then I'm going thinner. And I don't mind these spaces because I'm looking for a more painterly look. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and carve through this with the X-Acto knife to get a kind of precise line. So I'll have this sort of shimmery background and then the sharper line. And I was talking, sorry, I kind of jumped around. I was talking about, on my website I have an article about, it's called Pattern in Social Media, and I talk about projecting in that article. So you can just go on my website, it's shanasalaff.com, and click on written publications and you'll be able to see that. And there's some earlier articles where I do overhead projecting too. So if you go back in my articles, the one called a Mockingjay vase, I also do some projecting. It's just a small part of the article, but it's in there too. Oh, Stacy, I see you're saying you take your projector to the studio tomorrow. I know, it's amazing. And hey, hon. Oops. Sometimes I like it just like without anything on it, like just the projection, like on a blank canvas or something. I find it amazing. Let's see. I'll keep painting until there's one that's dry enough for me to carve through it. And I should probably get a narrower brush to do these individual guys, but I'm not going to. I'm going to just do that. Yep. Let's see if there's any more questions. Yes, yeah, she's, Luna's so funny. She likes to be around wherever I'm at, so it's like she'll just find, sometimes she wants me to talk to her, and sometimes she's happy. Like right now she's I don't know, looking at my glaze ingredients. Yeah, somebody asked again about patterns. This was actually from a rug. The one I used last I had purchased from an online source, which I talk about that in that pattern social media article. There's actually a link, I think. And I'll show you some other ways of making pattern when I take my little break from here. Now, how do I know what time it is? Oh, it's been half an hour. Okay. I better start hurrying up because I want to show you something else. Okay. Alright. Okay, so I'm just going to do those, guys. I can come back and do those later, no problem. So now I'm going back in with my X-Acto knife and drawing in the rest of the pattern. And you can still see it. Maybe it's a little bit fuzzy now that there's like a color on top of it. But it's really not that hard to see. Especially, what happens is you get to know your pattern. So you get to know what it's going to do, what direction the line takes. Oops, I meant to do these little circles first. And you can get kind of an intimate relationship with the pattern. Some I've been using for like more than a decade. So I said the underglaze melts. This is a Dunkin' underglaze, and they do melt physically. They're closer to a glaze than an underglaze when you really think of it. So like you don't use this on the bottom of your piece because it'll stick to the kiln shelf. So this is like sgraffito basically with this underglaze, the way I'm working with it now. You could probably do this with Maiolica, you know, sgraffitoing through if you dip the piece in Maiolica. There's a lot of possibilities. I first started using this, well, people in the painting department were projecting for their paintings, you know, and then this one gal brought it in the ceramic studio, and she did the coolest thing with it. She had this slide carousel with patterns on it and then a pot up on the wall, and then she projected the different patterns onto the pot, and it was just the coolest thing. So that really got me into doing this with pots as well as just with painting. Alright. Okay. I'm not seeing any recent questions, so I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to move this to the side and show you. I'm going to show you a bit more of the hardware. Put another light on. I'll turn this guy off for now. So this is what the transparency looked like for those of you who didn't make it at the beginning. And this is a pattern I got at a workshop. Someone brought in a piece of wallpaper, and I liked it, and she let me take a photocopy of it and take it home. And one thing that you can do on your computer is change the scale. So you can make it larger or smaller, because the projector is going to make it bigger. So for instance, here's a larger version of that same pattern. And I find generally you need to go smaller, but you know, I've used this on bigger pieces. Here's the one I was using earlier. It's actually the single cell of it. And then, there we go. This is what it looks like. I could just call it tiled. So I was using the X-Acto knife to carve into the clay surface what I'm seeing projected in the patterns. And just a little tip, I use a clear one on top of the acetate on the projector because sometimes it wavers around or it flexes on the machine. And these are inkjet transparencies. They're a little pricey. They're about $40 a box. I mean, the box is like a 50 or 60 or something. But can you show the last flower part? I don't understand the question. Please ask it again. So the inkjet transparencies, there's a side that you print on, and then there's the other side, and it has a piece of white paper to show you which side is on the top. So I think you guys were asking me for the transparency of the piece that I just did. Let me put something behind it. You can see it better. Those are the flowers I was just painting. Now, you don't have to go from a digital or a printed image. One thing that you can do, and you still can use the computer, but the computer's still helpful, but I bought this fabric when I was in Asia, and it has a lot of really neat patterns. And I've traced them just with a Sharpie on a piece of acetate. And I used this actually right on a slab of clay, and I kind of pressed into it. But you can project this. Now this is quite large. If you look at the difference between like this flower and these other flowers, they're smaller. So what you can do with something you trace is take it into your computer and shrink it down, and you know, while you're at it, you can put more on a page. And so you can do anything that way, like a favorite piece of clothing or scarf or anything. Even like I've done a drawing. I did a mug for my friend's son, and he had drawn his dog. So I took a photograph of his drawing, and then I projected it, I imported it, I shrunk it and projected it, and then I made a mug with like his drawing right on it, and he really liked it. And I think I even did his signature too. Let's see, what else was I gonna show you for the tips? Some of you might need to see the projector again, but I'm gonna wait on moving the camera until near the end. Let's see. So one thing I said I would show you is the bulb. This is the container the bulb comes in. These are like $35, so they're not cheap. So if you find a projector with a bulb in it, then you're lucky. But they do last a long time. What you want to do is make sure that when you turn the projector off, you let it do its cool down fan. I don't know how many of you can hear the sound of the projector whirring, but it went on for a little while after I turned it off, and then now it stopped. So now it's cool enough that I think it's hard on the bulbs to go from hot to cool like that. So another thing I wanted to show you guys is how to take care of your piece that you've just made. Dang it, I gotta go get one thing. Scrubby pad. So the X-Acto knife lines, they're quite sharp, and when it's bone dry, you can feel it, you can feel how sharp it is. So I use one of these scrubby pads. And if I'm doing a lot of these, I'll wear a mask. I'll do it in a special setting. Just for this one cup, I'm not going to do the mask. And I'm going to scrub against the direction of the lines. So if you go along the line, it doesn't really get anywhere. And I've discovered that you kind of want about a medium touch with this. If you scrub it too hard, you lose the detail, unfortunately. What I do is right at the rim, like of a cup where someone's going to have their mouth, I'll go extra firm and make that as smooth as I can. And what I do after the X-Acto knife cutting, I let it dry, I clean it up, and then I bisque fire it. And I'll show you the next step. I think I have just enough time for that. So the deeper and cleaner your lines are, the better this works and the least amount of damage you end up doing. If you can see, there's a little bit of kind of cracking going on here, which is kind of could add to the aesthetic, but that's kind of like what you either count on or you make all the lines nice and perpendicular. If you have underglaze, I don't do a lot of painting on underglaze and greenware, to be honest, but if you have some, the sanding doesn't really do that much because underglaze has a lot of gums and other things in it that make it stick. If you used a clay slip, it might sand off. I'm not sure, but the underglaze, I've never really had a problem unless it was like super thin maybe and you went at it really hard. And then I'm not going to do this right now, but I'm going to show you this really cool tool that I bought online. It's a power blower. I think it's for people for their computers. But I take all my sanded pots into the garage, I wear a mask, and I blow all the dust out. Because if you don't blow it out, I find that sometimes it gets stuck in there and it clogs the lines. And you can use your mouth to blow it, but that if you've got 30 cups, it's kind of a pain. And then after the bisque kiln, I often have to sand it. I go over it with my finger to see how sharp the lines are. And if I feel anything, like if it catches my finger at all, then I take my 80, 120 grit sandpaper. Move this out of the way. And I'll sand them. And this is a demo piece. It doesn't have a bottom. Usually I go over my name on the bottom. And then what I do is I just rinse them off. I rinse everything off in the sink after I sand them. So I can't glaze them for a day. Okay, so I have, let's see, I think I have about 15 minutes left. Oops, come on. It's 8:42. I can show you real quick the last couple of things. So I wanted to show you, let me do this in a good order. I wanted to show you how I inlay, and then I wanted to show you trailing onto a plate with the same technique. So here's a cup that I just bisque fired and I washed it, and I'm going to show you my inlay technique. And this is with a glaze that I make myself, and the recipes in that article on the Mockingjay vase, it's a very high percentage of copper and chrome. And what it does, let's see if you can see. It fumes, so you can kind of see that the lines have some. It's not just plain. Like if it was an underglaze, it would be very clean and crisp. But I like using this other technique because I like what it does with the colors of the glaze that's on top of it. So I don't know, let's get the good. So can you see how there's activity in this poppy? It's not just purple and black. There's a lot going on. So that's why I've chosen to use this technique. And the recipe's in that article, and if anyone wants me to get it to them personally, you can message me. So what I do to inlay into this pattern piece is I take this glaze and I brush it on. I make sure it gets in the lines. And because it's doing some kind of reacting with the clay, I kind of like getting it on the whole surface before I wash it off. So, for example, I've just done this small piece. Yes, sandpaper is good. Water is good to keep the particles down. And then I wipe away. Actually, usually I don't use the nice expensive sponge. I use the cheaper one for this. And if you wipe away across the lines, then you don't pull the inlaid ingredient out. So it'll stay in there. And the deeper your lines are, the nicer that works. Another thing you can do, let's see, let me get this. Another thing you can do if you want to save a bit of time is put that material in a trailing bottle and then trail right into the lines. And the only reason I don't bother to do this is because I like having that glaze on the whole surface. Yeah, this is bisque. But you can use any, glaze or underglaze with this in the bisque pattern and play around with stuff on top of it. I mean, it's really kind of a good way. Like what I really like about this incised line is it's really sharp. It's really defined. So your glaze color that you're painting can be really soft and smooshy and changeable, but when you have that defined line, it brings a clarity to it that I think for me I really like the best, to have that line. It's more like it adds that kind of drawing look. Someone, who was it earlier who did that wonderful slip transfer video or demonstration, and she was talking about that, doing it with the black slip trailed line. It's the same kind of thing. You'll see it in paintings. Van Gogh outlined everything in black. I mean, that might have been a little much, but that idea of having a sharp line and then softer stuff going on at the same time. So after I finish this, I do the whole piece, and then I take a glaze. In this case, I'm just showing you with my underglaze, and I fill these in. And actually, one of the reasons I switched to this bigger pattern, let me show you on this part. It's a bigger pattern. I used to do these tiny little flowers, and they took forever. But here I can actually just paint across the whole thing. And the dark glaze comes through and shows the lines, and it's faster. I used to do these tiny little leaves, and I still do them, but it took me a really long time. I would fill in each one. I guess I could have put wax around it, but I figured that would take just as much time in the end to do that. All right, so do you guys want to see, well, you can't really answer in time, but I'll show you the last thing, the projecting onto bisque. And this is, it's really inspiring to have this projector where it's like, there's kind of a freedom to it. You're not so limited. You're not, I don't know, it just really, I just find it lets me like take a deep breath, like, oh, okay, the pattern's there. All I have to do is work with it. It means I don't have to fuss over where it's going to go. Okay, I'm starting again, so I'm going to have to rearrange those lights. And let me double check the time. It's 8:50, so I got 10 minutes. I'm going to just do about 5 so I can take more questions. I did the back while I was practicing, and now I'm going to do the front. So let me turn off those other lights, get the setup going. Okay, so I wonder if I could even turn it a bit. Let's see. Overhead's still on. Okay. Come on. Come on. I did this before. Let's see. There we go. All right. Okay, can we see? Can we see? I think we can see. I've got the components over things, so it's hard to tell. Let's see. Come on. All right. No. Oh, there's a light on in the other room now. So this is actually the pattern that I used to use. Maybe I gotta trying to have it exactly the way I had it before. There we go. Okay, so you can see it's a lot smaller. And I'm gonna just focus this again. And what I like doing with this is playing with how it is on the pot. So it can, I don't use all of it, I use parts of it. So let's say I'm looking at this part right here. So I'm looking, I'm looking at this flower with the leaves around it. So I can paint it here, but I can also play around with where it sits in the piece. Maybe I want it coming down off the left side. This is actually kind of how I like it. Okay, and this is a William Morris pattern. Wallpapers are really good source for pattern. Let's see how well this works. Can you see? Yeah. This is that same underglaze. The Duncan, and this is actually one of my favorites. It's called Dark Wine, and it's a beautiful red. And it melts like I was talking about. Which I like because any kind of lime quality you don't like that much, it melts just enough that you can't really tell. So it's really, I don't know, it's kind of great for this process. And the squeeze bottle is, there's so many companies making them now. Zeem makes them. They have a set of different sizes with different size tips. And you basically find the tip that does what you want it with. I'm using the pink tip here. And I'm using the underglaze right out of the bottle. So yeah, feel free to shoot questions at me because we're near the end. So I want to make sure I get anyone's unanswered questions taken care of if I've missed it. I think this is orchids and like chrysanthemums or something. And what I like with something like a plate is having the pattern kind of flow on and off the plate. So it looks like it's coming from the edge, flowing on this way. So magazine article question, yes. On my website, shanasalaff.com, you can access my articles. You go to shanasalaff.com, click click written publications, and then it'll take you to them, and I have some more information about this because I've covered it in some of the articles. So I'm just going to show you a little bit me playing with this. Let me just check this. Yes, thanks for answering each other's questions. I appreciate that. So let's say I was done. I'll probably keep going, but let's say I wanted to do something on this side. Let's see, can we see this side? That's important. Or even let me just show you down at the bottom here. I can take the pattern and move it around and find a different part of the same pattern that I want to put there instead of what was already there. And one thing I love about this particular pattern is it has a combination of small leaves. These are like more stubby leaves, and then these more long flowy leaves. And I like the way that they kind of contrast with each other. Oops. So some questions about my glazing methods. I rebisque. So this piece right here, I'm trailing on bisque. The reason I trail on bisque and not greenware is the greenware clogs the tip up, and then it also scratches the greenware. So this piece is, I don't re-bisque fire it because I paint inside of it. I paint around it, kind of like coloring inside, and then I do some other stuff on the background. But if I was concerned about using something wet that would smear the lines, then I would rebisque it. But you know, I would probably mix up a clear. But I was just brushing with some a clear actually. Just real quick, you can see the difference. This has and I'm having internet connection issues. Let's see. Come on. Alright, and I'm running out of time. Okay. So I guess what I was, sorry, that's loud. I was trying to show you that I've put clear on here, and so it hasn't fumed as much. But in general, I don't use a clear, and I paint around it. You know, well, anyone who lives in Fort Collins, I have an extra one I could lend you out. You'd have to come tonight, though, before we're all shut in. Oh, aloha. Thanks, everybody. It's much appreciated that you came to watch. Let me get this projector thing off, and I'll take another quick look at the projector itself. Come on. It's hard to do this. There we go. Here's the machine. You can go online and buy them or use a digital projector and have fun with that. All right, you guys, hope you're inspired. Cheers. Have a good night. Oops, gotta turn this off. Finish.